always more reserved about that. If you're around Jeter, right? You're on Giambi and Bernie Williams and guys that you in a way grow up and you see them on TV and maybe you can idolize these people. But I was so standoffish with it, given my name and who I'm supposed to be.
Welcome into another great week, another great conversation here on Cousins Conversations. And I have Gary Sheffield Jr. from the Yankees Unloaded podcast. And Gary, I was at the game last night, White Sox Yankees with a 4-game series here this week in Chicago on the South Side. So first off, hello, and just let's start there with your thoughts on that game last night, because I'm watching this game and White Sox get off to a hot start, and then Yankees just kind of win ugly here.
That was one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. You could have been a fan of the White Sox, the Yankees. It is even in a win. It was like our starting shortstop, and that was our shortstop. Like Anthony Volpe's dropping pop-ups. The third baseman for Chicago is patting his glove and beating out routine ground balls. It was a ridiculous outing, and in a way, I wish I was there just because I think it was a little longer than a typical game. But yeah, dude, it was. For White Sox fans, I know they're playing better baseball, obviously good for you guys, but this is as ugly as the Yankees play all year. It didn't matter who's healthy or not, dude. This is the way we do it.
Yeah, I was curious because I'm thinking like, wow, they're the second best team in the AL, but Aaron Judge is on the IL and Cody Bellinger's on the IL. So like, how are they doing this? And I kind of saw last night, they make the good throws to the relay cutoff man to get Coulson Montgomery at home. They play small ball, get teams to create errors and everything. So now I see how they're doing it now, Gary.
Well, we typically don't do that, ironically. So I think we gave you a good showing. We don't do the small ball stuff. You saw us bunt. I think you saw Jazz bunt. You saw Jason Dominguez make a quality out. Spencer Jones came in lefty on lefty and put a ball in play, and we scored a run. We don't usually do that. Really, the Yankees win because we have great pitching, and ironically, you didn't see that yesterday. Max Fried was awful, and I expect Garrett Cole to be a lot better today.
Yeah, for sure. I was expecting Max Fried because the Yankees were heavy favorites, but I did do a little bet myself for White Sox for Vargas, Montgomery, Coulson, and Mooney to get hits. So that hit for me last night. So I was excited to see that offense, but. Now that we know that Judge is probably not going to be back and Bellinger is not going to be back for probably the last couple of weeks of the season, what do you expect going forward here, especially with the deadline coming up?
You'd expect aggressiveness, right? You can't rely on Bellinger now. He's your best defensive outfielder. You don't just get to plug and play him in left field anymore. It's the most difficult position to play at Yankee Stadium. Now they've got to figure out who does that, and you sort of look at their options. You saw what it looked like in left field yesterday. It was a struggle bus. We were all over the place. The defense is going to be patchwork. And what better way to patch work other than the deadline being 6 days away and you're on the fence about Mason Miller and they're trying to land him, right? You can look at other right-handed outfield bats. I expect Brian Cashman, he looks at this roster honestly and says, can we survive without our 2, 3, and 5 hitters for 6 to 8 weeks? My answer, it should be no. So your deadline needs to move accordingly. And if it doesn't, it might be the difference between the White Sox participating in October and the Yankees just sort of being in a second wildcard spot and an early exit.
Wow. Okay. And how has Ben Rice done what he's done? I saw like 31 home runs, almost 100 RBI. We're getting there close.
Yeah.
So what has it been about him that he's had this season?
He's just figured out a way to try to do the little things, right? You saw that at bat yesterday, lefty on lefty, and I was just surprised that Chicago opted to pitch to him. But last year's Ben Rice would have tried to put the ball in the seats to give the Yankees the big hit, whereas 2026 Ben Rice is the type of guy where sometimes when I do less, it's going to equal more over time. And I think that just learning that simple idea and concept, Ben Rice is just honed in what it is that's being asked of him in every given at bat and just slowing down the process rather than chasing 40 homers or chasing 120 ribbies. He just takes it one at bat at a time, and it's a huge difference from last year to this year.
My old sports director from when I was in local news in Iowa, he's from Connecticut, big
Mhm.
Yankees fan. I saw him at the game last night, but he always told me that he loves Aaron Judge, but just not in the postseason. He,
Okay.
so what's your take on that? Because his numbers do go a little bit down, but I mean he's going to be back for the postseason, and
Right.
we know what he's done in the regular season, hitting home runs and doing what he does out there in the outfield. But what do you think about what my former boss thinks about Aaron Judge in the postseason?
I used to agree with him. I did. And I didn't even have to see him like play well this past postseason to really change my opinion. My thoughts on the Yankees are that the way that they're built, they don't have a lot of table setting, right? And you watch the typical Yankees from the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s, you have a Jeter, you have a Damon. You have guys who their job's to get on base and set up the role for the big boppers. Whereas the Yankees today are currently constructed as you see a Jazz Chisholm, you see a Stan, you see a Bellinger, you see a Judge. You're like, who does what role? And you sort of realize that they're just taking turns trying to do the same role. And I think all it's done is put more pressure on Aaron Judge to be the hero in October instead of just playing his role, which any all-time great player has always done in October. Alex Rodriguez just filled a role in 2009 to win a World Series. And if Damon and Jeter weren't doing their jobs, there'd be so much pressure on A-Rod, he wouldn't have come through. So I'm a firm believer that the Yankees roster construction has really put Judge in a position to try to play hero ball in October. And I mean, Nick, you've watched probably plenty of postseason baseball. Hero ball doesn't work in October. You just have to get the job done, whatever that is.
Is there a way to fix that other than changing the roster? Or
No,
I mean, okay.
nope. No, because technically, you know what Aaron Judge did last year, which is that the roster didn't change. It actually got technically worse offensively from 2024, but he decided I'm going to be a player who hits for average, and then the power numbers in some way dipped, and everyone's wondering when's the big hit going to happen. And then we saw that obviously in the Toronto series. He was trying to pick his spots rather than every single at bat being dire, and it turned out where you're like, oh, he hit 500, but yet the Yankees still didn't score a whole bunch of runs. This is a Yankee roster construction issue. That's on Brian Cashman.
And I know Yankees fans also have strong opinions on Aaron Boone as a manager
Yeah.
as well. What's your take on Aaron Boone? Because I know there's a lot of Yankees fans out there that are like, I don't want him to be the manager.
Pros and cons. Aaron Boone, he keeps the room mentally, I would say, safe, right? And there's absolutely strengths to that. You bring two different personalities on opposite sides of the room. It's not always the easiest job to get a player who's maybe outspoken like a Jazz Chisholm and a player that's quiet as a mouse to come together on one goal. And Aaron Boone does that really well. So you have to give him a ton of credit for it. It's the reason that the records seem to be really similar. I mean, you look at the Yankees record through this amount of games in 2024, 2025, and 2026, rosters are completely different. And yet we get the exact same results. That's partly to do from Aaron Boone, but also Aaron Boone's not the type of personality to expect everyday effort. If a player doesn't give you effort, he's in the, oh, we're really disappointed about that. We'll see you tomorrow. There's not really a higher baseline of expectation. I mean, just yesterday, you saw Ben Rice on a man on first and second, ground ball. He's running back to the base. Those type of mistakes are unacceptable in games this late in the season. And yet Aaron Boone somehow, some way hasn't found a way to get these players to play smarter baseball.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happened the other night against the White Sox playing that way.
Yeah.
And you also host the Yankees Unloaded podcast. So
Yeah.
how did that start for you?
You know, ironically, so my really good buddy, Jake Ellenbogen, he ran a Rams show called Downtown Rams. And I always admired his work, just covering football. And I always feel like the coverage is pretty similar. If you can host a quality football show, you can always go over to baseball as long as you're passionate about it. And I felt like Jake was as passionate about the Yankees as I was. And so I brought the idea to the table that, hey, I think we can do this. And of course, he was a little reserved about the idea, just considering the Rams side of things is much less saturated than Yankees podcast. I mean, there's a million different Yankee shows, but I told him straight away, there are a lot of Yankee shows, but there are not a lot of good ones. And people would be surprised if you put your mind to it, how quickly you could separate yourself in this field. And he trusted me, and we started this show. I told him we have to go every day. We have to separate ourselves with quality. We want to make sure that we have the best microphones, camera quality. We want to have a plan of how we're going to do this. And we stuck to that, and it's grown ever since.
How have you done that separation? Is it just being consistent and showing up a lot, or how have you seen the audience growth over your time of doing it?
It's really just been about community, right? And just making people feel like their thoughts are being heard and then also being part of the show. There's a lot of podcast hosts who are like, hey, man, I see 10 people in the audience and they compare it to a channel that's been around for a decade, say a Talking Yanks. And they'll say, well, I'm never going to get to this stage. They either quit or they see 10 people and their first thought isn't to communicate with those 10 people and make sure that those 10 people feel comfortable and confident returning back to your show the next day and building a schedule. I just felt like I built up a trust between me and the audience and Jake and I, which is that you're going to be able to expect me to show up and be professional every day. And after every Yankees game, we should be the first group on your mind. And I feel like over time that's happened.
Yeah, I saw you went live after the game last night, so people were
Yeah.
already engaging and things like that. From the podcasting perspective, though, once you got into it, what was like the biggest thing you learned and had to keep evolving over time?
It's difficult to not get stuck into the negativity, right? And in today's world, if the White Sox lose 10 straight after having played good baseball, it's technically the best time for your show to grow. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. But you also have to build up some trust. And I've had to learn that over time, is that it's also really important at times where it's really negative to offer something positive so that it doesn't feel like you're just the negative podcast for angry fans. You want it to be a place where both sides can come together. And I've noticed that a lot, especially with Yankees podcasts, which is that channels are either overly negative or overly positive cheerleading. You need a middle ground. And I feel like at the very least, it's my opinion, is that we're somewhere where we want to be in the middle.
For you in the media space, so what kind of started that passion for you to want to get into that media and that podcast space?
It's a good question. I mean, my grandpa always said before he passed, he said that you're going to be a show host. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't want to be a show host. I want to be making hundreds of millions of dollars playing baseball in center field for the Yankees. But I think as time went on, my identity wasn't really wrapped up into being a baseball player. I just wanted to be successful in whatever that was. And, every once in a while, like some people would be like, hey, it seems like you know the game. Let's bring you on my show. And over time, I thought, if I'm going to be joining everyone's show all the time, and I always join other podcasts, why don't I just start a podcast of my own? And instead of complaining that one network isn't really covering what I want them to be covering, why don't I cover it and take some responsibility for what's out there? And I did that, and somehow, some way, now it's somewhat become a career.
How have you found your voice over time and really like brought people to you and had people gravitate towards your work?
It's the personality of it's personality of both sides of my family, to be honest with you. The way that it works, I mean, you saw how my dad dealt with himself, in the media. My mom is the exact same way. Obviously, she doesn't have the media to deal with, but her personality is identical. It's the type of person where we'll almost vomit our opinion out at you, and you just have to deal with it. But over time, I also have to hone that in and make sure that it's coming in a professional way, because the media it's designed for us to be angry at one another and just get into a group, right, and assimilate with people who all just agree with us. And I've had to figure out a way to communicate with people that don't see my side of things. And so it's been a learning experience that's taken me probably over a decade to figure out.
Important part of your journey, you mentioned it. You grew up as the son of a major league baseball player and
Yeah.
Gary Sheffield Sr. How has that shaped who you are and where you are at this point in your life?
Well, at first, I feel like it hardened me to criticism. And that's something that anyone that puts themselves out there, like you have a show and just seeing your name out there, right, and putting your work out there, it opens up the door for a ton of criticism. And I was criticized at a really young age, right? If you're not on track, I mean, Charlie Woods deals with the same thing now. When he was 11, 12 years old, it's not just good enough for you to be good at golf. You also have to be good at golf, and you need to be where your dad is or surpassing it at the age that he was at. And you deal with that at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. So in a way, it hardens you for this environment that I'm now in, I'm at this point. And I just have to just be realistic with the fact that some people are going to have negative expectations. The second that they see my name, they feel like if you're not standing in right field for the Boston Red Sox, that your life's a failure, and you can't take that stuff, seriously or to heart. Otherwise, I mean, you're not going to feel very good about yourself. So as long as I feel good about me, we're good.
Yeah, it's one thing to have the last name, but you also have the first name as well.
That's
How
right.
much more challenging, difficult is that to have the exact name?
Just expectations. It's just expectations, and you just have to realize it's other people's expectations. And a lot of times nobody really places negative expectations on me unless I'm using my platform in a way that they don't see fit. And I get that. I understand it. We all want other people to spew our takes and all agree with us at one time. But I had to realize that not everybody's gonna like what I have to say, and that's okay. But as far as obviously coming up with his exact name, trying to figure out what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, and then just finding a middle ground and just understanding that I don't have to feel bad about any advantage that might be there in the baseball space. Some people may trust me just simply by seeing my name, and then other people might think, oh, he's only there because of that. I just have to respect both sides and just do my thing.
Growing up around like major league clubhouses and things, did you pick up anything, or were you really too young to really comprehend a lot of what was going on around you?
I was more observant. I was never the type of guy. I was never the type of dude who would have a baseball and just like run up and, hey, can you sign this ball? And just really trying to milk the experience. I was always more reserved about that. If you're around Jeter, right? You're on Giambi and Bernie Williams and guys that you in a way grow up and you see them on TV and you maybe you can idolize these people, but I was so standoffish with it, given my name and who I'm supposed to be, that in a way I just sort of watched and saw how they work on things, the differences between great players and just players who stick around or players who are good, and even the players that don't play well. A lot of times it doesn't have to do with talent, it has to do with mentality. And I feel like those experiences, I've tried to mesh them into what I give in the podcasting angle. And so far it's worked out.
Have you ever talked to any other athletes, kids as well? Maybe got some perspective from them about maybe like some misconceptions people don't know or how they handled things in
Yeah.
that area?
Yeah, I have. I actually have talked to a few. Obviously, I'll leave them nameless just so
Hmm.
I can kind of
Yeah.
be more transparent with how those talks went. But it's more so about the people in my position, maybe that share names, they're juniors, or their name that obviously the son of a famous athlete. It's more so about people having the expectation that before you've built something, you're a loser. But then once you've built something, it's somebody else's responsibility and they're doing. You have to wrestle with that and ignore that, because if you can't, you're just never going to try at anything. And I'm not here to say that I was never in that angle, because I was at some point in that box and trying to get out of that. But that's been so far what I've noticed about the experience of other players with names is that if you don't make professional baseball, you really have to ignore the outside noise and then just do what you do. So, but at this point, once you get into your late 20s, your early 30s, I've been seeing some much better reviews than a lot of the people I hear when I talk to them in their early 20s. They're like, this just sucks, and there's nothing good about it.
So having this podcast and now making a name for yourself,
Mhm.
you feel more like you've done something for yourself now and feel good about where you're at.
I do. I absolutely do. And obviously I'm more privy to what's going on behind the scenes. And I feel like I'm even going to take a step further over the next couple years. And my goal was always to be on TV and obviously make a living for my family and make sure everybody's comfortable. I don't have goals really too far after that. Like, I don't have these crazy aspirations to be this wealthy person that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't have to have that. It's easy for me to be in comfort. And yeah, I just feel like at this point, I understand what the field's about. That people are fired every day. People lose their jobs, even really talented people. So in a way, you just can't take any of this to heart. You really can't. You have to protect yourself. And I feel like in a way, also, Nick, you've started your own show. A lot of people do that backwards. They finally get their big break. You get paid a little less than you expect. You get that big network job. You work at MLB Network. Maybe you work at, right, ESPN. You get fired from those jobs. And then you decide, oh, I didn't realize I was fireable. And then you start your own network and you kind of go from there. We're kind of, both of us are in a way doing it the correct way, which is that you protect yourself on the front end. And then in the off chance you get a bigger job, then nobody can fire you and ruin your life. So I like where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that was a similar journey for me. I mean, I was in local news for 7 years, and then I got laid off. So, and I was already kind of doing this a little bit,
Right.
in
It's tough, by the
yeah.
way, to really go full board at
Mhm.
this while you're doing the big boy job because nobody thinks they're going to be fired. But when I was working with, I was working with a gambling company. I worked with them a couple years ago, and I'm thinking, oh, my return on investment's incredible. They really like me. They would never get rid of me.
Mhm.
And then one thing leads to another. There's a lawsuit, and then people have got to be let go. And next thing you know, I'm like, hold on a second. I've got to start a show now. Hey, you're now, I need to just pull myself up from my bootstraps. Like, what's going on? And that's what had to happen. And I've seen really talented people in the industry. Ariel Epstein, she worked at MLB Network,
Mhm.
and I went on the show and traveled all the way out to New York to see it. And I'm thinking, Ariel's in a position that everyone wants to be in. And 3-4 weeks later, after doing the show, she was let go by MLB Network. And I was having left the studio thinking they would never let her go. And yet she had to start her own network as well. This industry, whether you're in the news like you were, or Ariel's in sports, I'm in sports, you could be fired in a second. And you need to protect yourself and find ways to leverage your time in this industry, which is, I'm glad to see obviously you're doing your own thing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been great. It's I think it was kind of more of like a sign for me to kind of go
Yeah.
all in on this because that's how more of I saw like the more positive spin on
Yeah.
it. But you're totally right though because you see a guy like Carl Ravitch who was at ESPN for over 30 years and now he's
Insane.
let go. Yeah, insane. But now we're both in this digital space here.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're seeing sports and the industry go.
Right.
So what have you noticed about just the digital push and why the industry is going this way?
It really offers so much protection to a lot of these networks. If you really think about it, it's in a way during the COVID years, a lot of people were like, okay, well, I'm going to work from home. We're going to zoom in. And now everyone's trying to figure out the angle of how do I create multiple sources of income? Do I start the podcast and then they screen record me in over at MLB Network and then they screen record me in over at TNT and then I work this sponsorship over here. What we've all realized is now everyone's a de facto business owner now.
Yeah.
It's just convenient. It's found a way to be that. And the days of just having a desk job and being there for 25 years, I'm not saying that those years are coming to an end because they're definitely not, but it's reduced. The whole idea that I get the big ESPN job and then you're going to be there for 3 decades, I believe those days are essentially over. And you now it's okay, me and you are sitting in this room. Somebody might see this video and say, I want Nick to be a part of this. And it just brings another stream to you that otherwise might not have been there. So there's pros and cons. I feel like the pros to a lot of these big networks is that you can get rid of somebody on the drop of a hat and everybody's just sort of rotating around. But at the same time, it also provides a little bit more protection for us, which is that we don't feel so committed to these networks by, you know, maybe they just jump me in on the network instead of moving me in with the suit on. Right. So yeah, there's a lot at work here, pros and cons, but I try to figure out if you're proactive in protecting yourself, all this can be great.
Definitely, yeah. There's a lot more pros than I've seen cons so far, but just one of the
Definitely.
things that people don't really know, and I'm still kind of learning, is the business side of this, like
Hmm.
working with people to, be part of your show and advertise for them and things
Right.
of that nature. What have you learned from that side of things about like, going into business with somebody or if they want to sponsor your show, things like that?
That's tough. I look at it the same way as when you see a professional athlete and you think, oh, I love everything about the stats, right? The batting average, the home runs and everything. And you're thinking, oh, this guy, I want him to be a White Sox for good. But what people they don't ever do the research on is the people. Who's that person that you're getting into business with? That's way more important than any other business model you've got. And my business partner in Jake, part of the reason that I collaborated with him is that I knew the type of person he was. I always played Call of Duty and a bunch of video games with him prior, and I felt like I really knew the type of person he was, the type of person, how he would deal with the process of when we're getting 13 views. How's he gonna manage when we're making $0.00 a month? Is he still gonna work at this? How's it gonna be when you push a $20,000 a month? Is he gonna be finagling for money? Is it going to be, what's it going to look like down the road? You have to know the people, and I know how I am, but it's not good enough to just know me. I also have to know these people just as well. So that's a bigger part of this industry than what people give it credit for. They just think they can grab their friend or some dude who's really good on the internet that they see and respect, and they're like, I could be his business partner. I'm like, could you? Because if you knew them the way I knew them, they're going to take all your money. So the business side of this thing is it can get nasty. It's the real world, even on podcasts and all this stuff. And of course, as far as the business side goes, the nature of it's tough because you're told no so often, and that's okay, right? You ask a DraftKings, you ask Prize Picks, you ask all these different networks, hey, can you come sponsor our show? And when you hear no, you think, oh, they just think I suck as a podcaster. They just don't see the vision. But you also have to look at it from an angle of a return on investment. You have to give them exactly what they're looking for, and it isn't personal. It's just a matter of timing. And if the timing works out, the business tends to treat you well.
Betting's become a big thing, sponsoring a lot of different things, people making picks and putting
Yeah.
out their best bets and things like that. So what have you taken from, having betting sites wanting to sponsor your things?
It's hit or miss because you don't love trying to convince people to go bet and spend their money. I mean, I don't love it, but at the same time, I've tried to wrestle with the fact of sometimes you'll hear gambling companies, other times you'll hear tobacco companies, and there's got to be a line in the sand somewhere. For some of us, there isn't, and that's fine. I'm not trying to tell anyone what to accept there, but there's a moral clause to it as well. Of who you work with, does that company tend to keep their talent? It has certain networks. Do they just bring on a new show and the following year you see an entire new lineup of shows? You have to keep all these things in mind before you make a partnership. And most people, they hear that, okay, well, Manscaped's called me, and they haven't done the research that they don't really pay their creators. And so when you hear these type of details, and so yeah, so that's the whole nother story. But you kind of see the deal is that not all money is good money, and it's a learning experience that even I was a victim of.
Yeah, I'm not at that phase yet, but we're getting there. So
Yeah,
appreciate
best of luck. You guys will absolutely do that.
Yeah. So appreciate the advice there, kind of just like looking out for things and everything. But growing up around baseball and everything too, like you said, you're like in clubhouses and dugouts, things like that. How does that like shape your view of the base of baseball and how people kind of, you were talking about, they see the name and they're like, okay, yeah, let's trust this guy.
That's an interesting question. I would say when I watch, and I've seen guys who are former athletes and they'll hire them, and I have no problem with that. I think it's really important to get people in the room that played and they have a different perspective, as long as it doesn't go on the perspective of being disrespectful to people who didn't play, right? And the people's voices who didn't play are just as important, or sometimes even more informed than people who played. And I had to learn that over time, which is that I've been in rooms with people who've hit 700 home runs in their career, and I'll listen to them talk about baseball, and they'll spew an opinion that I think is just wrong. And I didn't think that was possible when I got into the game and my love for the game. When I was 9, 10 years old, I'm thinking, well, just to make an example, if you go talk to an Albert Pujols, he just must know all the answers to the test. He knows how to play, he knows how to apply it, he knows how to make adjustments. There's nothing that a Carl Ravage could possibly share to increase the conversation. And I learned over time, at 13, 14, 15 years old and being in podcasting, oh my God, like there are people who didn't touch a baseball who know so much about the game because that's the only angle that they've been from. And I realized that there's a middle ground that I can provide. I've been around people that played. It doesn't mean I played, but I've also been around the nerds too. So in a way, I have a way of bringing both sides to the middle. And I feel like that's my strength right now as a podcaster.
How are you when you're watching the games? Like, do you watch it differently? Because like I'm thinking, like in
Yeah.
like local news, I used to put the highlights together. So I'm like, oh yeah, that highlight's a good home run. How are you watching the
Mhm.
game? Are you just like crazy intense, or what are you doing?
No, I'm casual. I'm really
Okay.
it's a casual experience. I realize now I wasn't this way like 4 or 5 years ago. I used to be really intense. I used to not want anyone in the room with me. I'm still this way somewhat for the Super Bowl. If my team's in it, I'm an Eagles fan. If the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, I watch the Super Bowl alone. There won't be anyone in the room with me because I'm screaming on every play. And I need to know who's blocking who. I need to know why aren't we running these certain plays, right? That we ran in week 6. That's the way I am. And I'm that way in some ways in October for the Yankees, but during the regular season, I feel like when you do a podcast every day, the intensity has to be managed. Otherwise, I mean, my hair would be gone. So, it, and you've learned this too with the White Sox is that you guys have had the lowest of lows the past decade, and you've
Yeah.
also had seasons where you were the only team on Murakami, and you took that risk, and you saw how that paid off. You have to manage your expectations and be somewhere in the middle because if you weren't, you just be miserable.
Yeah, it's been a long road to get to this point. I didn't think it was going to
Oh
be
god.
here this
Yeah,
early, but here we are. So, but
right.
yes, but what do you see though? Like, because like in the team with the White Sox, like you don't know how these prospects are going to pan out, and
Right.
then they do, and you're thinking as a
Mhm.
fan base, like we're getting all these prospects, all these picks, but you know that's a gamble in baseball. So, kind of comparing that to the Yankees and what you see there, is there anybody that's coming up that you're watching, or are you happy with like because you were saying like roster construction's a problem right now for them?
It's all about what you do next. If you make a decision that we're going to go prospects, and you guys are dealing with that right now with the Chicago White Sox, some of those guys are really working out. I know Murakami isn't considered a prospect, he's more of an international signing, but that's worked. And so people think that this is the most important step is having that work, but what they don't understand is that prospects aren't cheap for long. It comes after that, it comes an investment. What do we do next? And you saw with the Baltimore Orioles, they had a couple prospects really hit, right? You have Gunnar Henderson, right? You have Rauschman. But what happened next was waiting around. Was, oh, we'll wait till we're really close and then we'll go out there and spend. And then you notice that they started going backwards with that exact group. Toronto did the same thing, but they made a different decision. We're going to put a roster of characters around these guys. We're going to bring in Max Scherzer, right? We're going to bring in these various players who can help in the bullpen. And it got them over the hump, and they were a toenail away from winning the World Series. So my hope for all teams, the Chicago White Sox, is being these up and comer through prospect rosters. What happens next? There needs to be an expectation that we've hit on these guys. What are you going to do as far as players outside the organization? Are you going to spend behind that? And if you won't, this has a short window for us to do anything with it.
What is your response like when people say, "Oh, the Yankees just spend money, the Dodgers just spend money, the Mets just spend money"? It doesn't work for everybody. We see that with the Mets, obviously, but we see it with the Dodgers and the Yankees that it works for long periods of time. So, what's your response when that's somebody's argument to you?
My response is you should never be upset that somebody's investing in their own product when it's allowed. If you were the owner of a franchise, what would you do? Would you spend $150 million and say, well, it's just what's right? Or would you invest more money in the product, right? A company like Aloe, they pay more money to create their shirts and make their shirts, and then they sell it for more money, right? Same thing goes for the Yankees. Same thing goes for, you see a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates. They've spent very little money, but I can go to a Pirates game. I can sit in left field 2 years ago for $6. So the business
Yeah.
models are just different. And you have to understand from a business owner's perspective, there's risk in spending money. The New York Mets spent over $350 million. They spent more than New York Yankees, and it didn't matter. Why? Because their staff wasn't able to pull more out of talent that the Yankees have just clearly been able to do. The Yankees can find a Fernando Cruz in Cincinnati, whereas most Yankees fans have never heard of Fernando Cruz 3 or 4 years ago. So these are the type of things the Yankees do, and it doesn't have to do with money. And money's great. Money helps. The Yankees are dealing with injuries right now, and yet they have an Ahmed Rosario, a Paul Goldschmidt to kind of plug and play in the meantime. That's because of money. Money helps. Money doesn't bring you to the finish line. And I think people, if you had a one-on-one honest conversation, they know that. But the casual barstool type experience, it's kind of, if you spend money, you win. And that's the takeaway. And it's not always the case.
That's what's been proven in baseball right now. And yeah,
Right.
those tickets, those $6 tickets for the Pirates, that used to be the White Sox. They used to do this deal, like 2 beers, 2 hot dogs, for $20 for your
my God.
ticket. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cheaper to go to a White Sox game and get 2 beers than it is a local bar. Like, that's what it was. And now, like, thankfully, we're getting back on the horse here. And
Yes.
my good buddy White Sox Dave, he's been wanting to move the team and everything. It's been funny to watch, but I'm glad to see that he's getting his day in the sun finally.
Yeah, White Sox Dave, that guy's a character. I love that
He's
guy.
good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how I always like to end the episodes is just giving advice to people who are watching. So anybody that's wants to get into the podcast space, or is the son or daughter of an athlete out there that might be watching, what's your advice for them to be in this industry and have success?
Start. Everyone always says, I'm going to start the podcast. I'm going to start it on Saturday, and I'm going to do an episode, and they expect feedback right away. You're going to get no feedback. If I got no feedback, if all these other channels out here that are considered successful, whatever you consider successful, 100 views, 1,000 views, 10,000, just start and stop comparing yourself to other people. There's no reason for you, Nick, to compare yourself to me, and there's no reason for me to compare myself to Joe Rogan, because if we compare ourselves, you're going to find a way to quit and then just go do some regular job. If you actually have a passion for doing this, you have to take it like a job. It is a job. And I know that some people feel like it's a hobby, and you can definitely treat it as that. It's more of a, you can say what you think, and it makes you feel much better about that rather than just talking to yourself. But you have to really love this to do it. Nobody's going to cheer you on at the beginning. They'll just sort of cheer you on once it's working. So if you really want to do this, start and then get better at something every day. I know I kind of stole that from Mr. Beast, which is that your videos at the beginning are going to suck. And that's just the nature of it. And if no one believes me when I say that, go watch Athletes Wire, my first show that I did on YouTube. See the difference between me now and me then. If you saw me then, you'd say, well, this guy clearly has nothing going on. He's never going to have a show. It's never going to work. And I would honestly have said then, yeah, you're probably right. And I had big guess for no reason whatsoever. It was the worst show you've ever seen. And so if anyone needs any inspiration, go watch my old shows and then tell me then that you can't do it.
Yeah, no, I look back at my stuff when I first started doing this too, and it's like, yeah, it's crazy bad too.
It's a joke how bad
Yeah,
it is,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, look back at my old reels too from college and local news and everything. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I got here, but here we are, and we're thriving. Gary, before I let you go, plug away, tell people where they can follow you if they don't already do that.
Yeah, right now it's Yankees Unloaded on YouTube, and we do a show after every single Yankees game. Win, lose, or draw. I mean, there's no draws in baseball. Not at this point. I'm sure Manfred was working on it. But you can head over there, subscribe, be part of the community. We would love to have you. And good luck to your White Sox, man. And on everything. The show, everything growing, because I know it's definitely a difficult industry. But as long as you stay positive about it, dude, it's incredibly rewarding. I love it.
I appreciate you with the advice, coming on, talking about baseball. Make sure you follow his show, subscribe to this channel as well if you enjoyed this interview. Good luck to our Yankees and White Sox here going forward.
Yeah, you too, man. And please give us these next. Is it 2, 3 games? Do we have 3 more games in this series?
3 more games, yeah.
Yeah, please give us these 3 games. I know you guys, you don't really have 3 games to give away. We need these desperately before the deadline. So yeah, we'll settle on a split. How about that?
Yeah, that's good. And then, but you can beat up on the Cubs all you want this weekend. That's fine. I'm cool with that.
I know it's nuts. They have us in Chicago. I heard it's warm and muggy. So,
Yes.
so yeah, we'll go beat up on the Cubs for you. We'll do that.
Yeah. Awesome, Gary. Well, appreciate you hanging out with me here on Cousins Conversations, man.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day. Have a good week,
You too.
everybody.